Hi, in this video, I want to double or triple your response rates from your cold outreach methods, especially if you're a marketing agency. My name is Dhruv, and I help companies supercharge their sales efforts using automations just like these. So let's dive right in. Now, this was for an ad agency, and one of the main customers that an ad agency has is an e-commerce store. So there were two ways that we added qualification to the scraped leads for this agency. So what we did here is, firstly, you want to check if the company that you've scraped is actually the ICP, right? Because many times if you scrape from Apollo, for example, you don't get the exact company you're looking for, because sometimes you get like a internet, you get like a IT company that helps e-commerce stores. Sometimes you get a competitor. Sometimes you get an ad agency that sells to e-commerce stores, so on and so on. So in the first step, essentially what we're doing is we're doing a scrape of their web page. And then from that web page, we are asking a very simple question. We're asking to validate this web page, and we're passing in the scraped output, and we're limiting the number of characters, because if it's, sometimes it can be just absolutely massive. And we're looking to see if this is actually an e-commerce store, and we're giving it something like a 70% chance of it being it. So we don't make it like 10 out of 10 it has to be an e-commerce store, but a good chance that it's an e-commerce store. So that's one way of doing this. The other way that was very powerful is by figuring out, or by trying to proxy, you know, does this company have the budget to be our customer, right? Because in order for them to be our customer, they have to be mature enough. They have to have a good budget for ads. They have to be having all the other things figured out in their business before they are trying to scale. Because we're trying to help them scale. And in order to find companies that are trying to scale, there's one very solid indicator, especially in the e-commerce space, right? And that is the number of followers they have. Because what happens is, with Instagram ads or with Facebook ads, over time you're going to be serving a lot of ads, and people are going to follow you because you've served those ads. So a good indicator of whether or not you have already spent, or you do already spend 10, 20, 50 grand in ads a month, an indicator of that is the number of followers you have. And if you're spending 50 grand of ads in ads per month, then it's definitely possible that we can sell you a 6K retainer for really, really high quality ads. Okay. Now, if there's another company, maybe they're a little bit younger, and they're not maybe as mature, and they have fewer followers, then potentially we want to wait, and we want to potentially not reach out to them just yet, and increase the response rate that we have from our efforts, and filtering these out from our results. So how does this happen? How does this work? Now, Apify, which is an amazing service which provides a lot of different types of scrapers, they provide what is called an Instagram profile scraper. So if I give them the username, they will be able to find the information from their profile, and one of those pieces of information is going to be the number of followers. So let's go back to our automation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and let me just give it a quick run, and then we can start seeing how this works. I'm just going to activate it from our webhook. Okay. So what it's going to do is it's going to get all the rows from the sheet that I have. And in this sheet, I essentially have a bunch of different stores, right? I just hid all of the extra information that you get when you scrape from Apollo. But I have a bunch of different stores over here, and they have the org name, the website URL, and this is how we're going to be looking and validating if this is an e-commerce store or not. So the outputs are going to be inside this section. It's essentially the same number of columns, except we have this Instagram followers over here. So I'm going to go over here, and essentially it's going to pick up each row. This loop is where everything happens. So the start is with this Excel sheet, and then we have this massive loop which just goes in a loop over and over again with a few different decision points. Okay, so first decision point is if it's an e-commerce store or not, right? Because if it's not an e-commerce store, then there's no point of going ahead and doing any of this extra stuff over there. But if it is an e-commerce store, then what we want is we want a Instagram ID. And essentially what this does is it either says 0, 1, or it gives you the Instagram ID. Now, if output is 0, which means like we are just going to loop back, it was not an e-commerce store, then we don't do anything. If the output is something like 1, that means that it is an e-commerce store, but there was no Instagram ID. And if the output is an Instagram ID, then it means that we don't need to, do anything elaborate to find that Instagram ID from Google. We can just directly go to our scraper. So in here, if I double click, and here the Instagram ID, we're not able to find an Instagram ID. Now, if this is the case, then what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a search on Google. Because if for some reason we can't find the Instagram ID from their web page, then we can do a Google search with their company's name. So I search for Rima, and here you can see the second result inside Google is their Instagram page. So how do we get this ID from this page now? And actually, how do we do this Google search? Because I just did this manually. Now we want to be able to do this programmatically. So in order to do that, we have another API offered by Apify, and that is the Google Search Results Scraper. So this essentially allows you to search using a term. When in our case would have been something like Rima. We're able to do the scrape, we get the outcome, and if I go back here, we are then able to use an LLM node to extract the Instagram ID from these search results. So if I just look at the process over here, first I send an API request to our Google search results scraper. Okay, once I've sent that request, I need to wait for a little bit for that request to be completed. Because, and in this case, I could have just said, okay, just wait for 5 minutes, or, just stop it or just do this asynchronously where you are just waiting for 5 minutes minimum or maximum, and then you're going on to the next step. But, I've just realized that this is a good design pattern to have where you're just just polling at regular intervals to see if the request has been processed or not, because many times for some reason these scrapers take longer than you expect, way longer than you expect, and then your automation breaks down. So once we have polled the API and checked that our request that we sent here is completed, we're going to get that request, we're going to submit it to the LLM, and it is going to be looking to find the Instagram profile. We have the SERP results that we have placed over here, and then it gives you the Instagram profile. Okay, fantastic. So this was the case where we couldn't find the Instagram profile. There is a case where we can find the Instagram profile, and both of these are going to get joined into the Instagram Apify scraper. Because once you have the Instagram profile, now you can go and now you can find the Instagram followers by sending a request to the Instagram profile scraper. Okay, now we do the same exact thing. We do the polling over here where we just constantly loop, and then once the scraping is completed, we're going to get to this step over here where we're going to be getting the results from the request we had sent. Okay, and then we're going to be doing an if statement. Okay, and we're going to be checking if the follower count is greater than 20,000. If it's not greater than 20,000, then we're not going to be including those. But if it is, then we're going to be appending a row to our sheet. All right, so that's enough talking. Let me go over to the sheet and let's see if we are getting any outputs. Okay, so far we have a Rima over here with 96,199 followers. That should be approximately correct. All right, there we go. So yeah, that's essentially how you can very easily filter out a lot of the companies that do not match your ICP and really get solid outcomes from your cold outreach methods. And this specifically was used for email, but you can use the same thing for LinkedIn, cold calling, and so on and so on. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, if you want something like this installed for yourself, if you want to brainstorm and strategize on what could be the scraping or the tool, the method that we could utilize to increase your response rates, then feel free to ask a question. and book a quick, strategy session, and then we can figure that out. So yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy your day. Bye bye.